Hello, welcome to Breakfast with Pancakes, and I'm your host, PK Sullivan. This week I'm going to show you a recipe that's quick and simple, but really highlights the importance of having your mise en place. It's a vegetarian stuffed pepper, so let's get into it. Mise en place is the concept of having all of your ingredients ready to go, everything prepped and set before you start cooking. All of my recipe videos you see, I do the nice neat layout of the ingredients on the cutting board. That, by and large, is my mise en place. It's how I get everything lined up. The key to cooking this recipe effectively is once you get going, it just flows boom, 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 one thing into the other. We only use one pan on the stovetop, and then the stuffed peppers get transferred to a baking dish and roasted in the oven on a second dish. Along the way, I'm going to give you a couple of tips and tricks on how to handle and work with mushrooms. So here we go, roasted peppers stuffed with couscous, goat cheese, herbs, and mushrooms. Ingredients: 2 large bell peppers, mushrooms, vegetable stock, Israeli couscous, 1 clove of garlic, olive oil, a large handful of fresh mixed herbs, goat cheese, butter, panko. Prep your peppers by hollowing them out. Don't slice the tops off completely. They hold their shape better if you keep some of the top in place. Use a knife that you can choke up on for better control. This is a 6-inch utility knife. It works great. I can choke up on the blade to core the stem, and the blade is long enough to slice out the pith. Try to get as much pith as you can without slicing through the wall of the pepper. Shake out all the seeds. Next, mince your garlic. On to the mushrooms. Yes, I wash mushrooms. And you should too. People say, but mushrooms are sponges. They're going to absorb all the water. Well, not really. If you let them soak, sure, they'd absorb water. But if you're just rinsing your mushrooms, they won't really have time. And even if it were true, that's not a bad thing. More on that later. As far as washing your mushrooms, look, being polite about this, that black stuff is soil. You don't want to eat that. Rinse each one quickly under cool water, rubbing away the dirt and other detritus with your finger. Now, mince your giant mound of herbs. This is where a food processor comes in real handy. Saves a ton of time over chopping this many herbs by hand. Sure, it makes a few more dishes, but all the components are dishwasher safe, so it's really a negligible amount of work for me. You can use whatever herbs you like. This is a mix of mint, dill, parsley, and fresh oregano. After being minced, I think there's about a half a cup, 120 milliliters. Lastly, trim off the ends of the mushrooms. It occurred to me after the fact that you could chop the mushrooms at this point, and that would probably make more sense for the recipe. The written recipe in the show notes below reflects this change. Okay, so at this point you have all of your ingredients taken care of and they are ready to go. Now you want to get everything in its place. That's what mise en place means, everything in its place. Go ahead and set up your stove area. You want to have the stock and the mushrooms available immediately, the garlic, oil, and butter available a little bit later. On your cold workspace, you're going to want to have the couscous, herbs, goat cheese, panko, a medium bowl with a lid. Then a couple of stirring, turning, flipping devices. Let's get to cooking. Set a small saucepan over medium heat. Add the stock and bring to a boil. Now add the mushrooms and cover the pan. Cook those for 4 minutes. Whoa, 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 what am I doing with these mushrooms? They're sponges, right? They're just going to absorb a lot of water coming off of that boiling liquid. Yes, and that's actually good. One of the hardest things about sauteing mushrooms and browning them is that they tend to just absorb the oil and absorb the oil and absorb the oil, and they don't ever brown. They just turn mushy and oily and gross. To avoid that, what you want to do is steam or boil them for a couple of minutes. This does a couple things. First, the heat from the boiling starts cooking the mushrooms, breaking down the cell walls. That makes them more receptive to receiving liquid. Number 2, it's going to pull in a bunch of stock from the cooking liquid. I know it might seem counterintuitive, but that's a good thing. If we don't fill them with water, they're going to absorb the oil. Then you end up with greasy, disgusting mushrooms. If you fill them up with water, they become like a lot of other vegetables. When you fry something, you want to see it release bubbles immediately. That's how you know you have a good temperature for frying. When the food hits the oil, it immediately begins bubbling. That's what we're going for with the mushroom. We're weakening the cell walls so that it will cook faster once we fry them. And then we're flooding the mushrooms with water, well, vegetable stock in this case, so that when they hit the oil, that stock will boil and get pushed out. This is how you avoid mushrooms that stick to the pan, get flooded with oil, and just become a greasy, disgusting mess. Boil or steam them, and then fry. Back at the counter, add your couscous to a medium bowl and stir together with half the olive oil. Be sure to mix well so every grain of couscous is coated. After 4 minutes, strain the liquid into the couscous and set the mushrooms aside. Put the pan back on the stove. Stir the couscous to avoid dry pockets, cover, and set aside. Turn the heat back on to medium and add the remaining olive oil. I'm chopping the mushrooms now, but as I mentioned earlier, it's probably a better idea to do that before you boil them, so the recipe below does reflect that. Once your oil is just about smoking, add the mushrooms to the pan. See how the water immediately begins boiling out of the mushrooms? That's what you want to see. The expanding water vapor creates a high pressure area within the food. As that vapor is pushed out, it prevents the oil from getting in. Saute the mushrooms, stirring occasionally until they begin to brown. Add the garlic and continue cooking until it's fragrant, about 30 seconds. The garlic will probably stick to the pan, but that's fine. Back at the counter, remove the lid from the couscous and fluff it with a fork. Add the mushrooms, garlic, and herbs. Stir to combine. Fold in about 3/4 of the cheese and reserve the rest. Mix until the cheese is melted and evenly combined throughout. Off heat, add the butter to the saucepan and stir to deglaze. Pour the butter into the panko and stir with a fork to combine. Now stuff the peppers with the couscous and cheese mixture. Use a thin spoon or a butter knife to pack the filling in so there aren't any air pockets. Now top the stuffed peppers with the remaining cheese and sprinkle with the buttered panko. Transfer the peppers to a roasting tray if you haven't already. The peppers get roasted in the oven at 350, 45 minutes to an hour. So you see how having good mise en place lets us bounce from the stovetop to the counter, back to the stovetop, back to the counter, just back and forth. Each step flows one into the other. This recipe becomes a dance. All told, the entire process, start to finish, of cooking takes about 15 minutes. And that was me with managing cameras and microphones and lighting and everything. Like, it goes quick. Remove the peppers once they have roasted nicely, the panko is golden brown, and the filling is hot, between 165 and 180 degrees. Let rest a few minutes, but be sure to serve it warm. Serve the roasted peppers with a salad. Pasta with goat cheese and mushrooms is sort of a heavy entree. A side salad helps balance out the meal. This is a simple green salad of some arugula and baby greens tossed in a quick lemon vinaigrette. I love the creamy texture and tangy flavor of the goat cheese. It pairs well with the herbs and mushrooms. The herbs keep things light while the mushrooms give the dish an umami heft that makes it satisfying. Couscous gives body to the filling without weighing it down. Crispy panko is a nice contrast to the delicate filling. The roasted pepper is tender and sweet. If you used a green pepper, it would add an earthy vegetal note. This is a great weeknight meal and can even be prepared ahead of time. Just stop after you stuff the peppers. Top them with the cheese and panko right before roasting. They'll need a few extra minutes in the oven, but they're just as good. That is a really satisfying vegetarian meal. So yeah, just pair it with a salad for a nice, simple meal. If you want to make this ahead of time, make sure that it stands upright so they don't fall over and dump their stuffing out. All right, that's it for me. I will see you next time.